that fell through because there had not been evidence, to support the allegations that made. And just to tell you briefly, one of the allegations was that I had been a fugitive for 33 years or more. When I got arrested on Saturday, a segment was run on me by America's Most Wanted, John Walsh, that said that I had been a fugitive from justice. So I
And what year are we talking about, Cisco? What year?
Well, when I was arrested in '07.
Right.
And so just imagine, now they said that I had been a fugitive. Now, who is forwarding this information to America's Most Wanted? And, in programs like that, saying that I was a fugitive. Now, I live under my same name, I have my same Social Security number, and I pay taxes. So obviously, I am not a fugitive.
Right, and you're married, you have a family, you have children.
Right. And the other brothers also, there were attempts to criminalize them.
Absolutely.
So these are some of the things that have been happening to us. I mean, we've been, they said they had DNA on us. We'd been swabbed, and no DNA was found.
No DNA matched any of you.
Any of us, right? They said that they had weapons that were, that belonged to us, which they lost in their own evidence rooms, or wherever they lost it. I don't know, because we certainly don't have them. They said they have them, so they never been able to produce them after all this time.
Right.
So again, I'd say.
And what about this lighter, this fingerprint and a lighter?
Well, that's interesting, because they've had this in evidence, Kilu, all this time, they claim.
Uh-huh.
And the reason they said they weren't, well, at first they said they weren't able to match my fingerprints all these years. And suddenly, in supposedly 1999, somebody said that the fingerprints on that lighter match my prints. And so then that brought the question was, why weren't they able to match it before? Now, they claim that the reason they weren't able to match my prints before that was because they were looking at my fingerprints from a so-called right-handed perspective. That is, all their experts in all these agencies, FBI,
it's ridiculous,
local police departments, and also the Secret Service, had looked at my prints, and they couldn't match my prints to that so-called print on that, or those prints, because they're just not one set of prints on that lighter, by the way.
Oh, goodness.
And they said that the reason for it is because they were looking at it from a right-hand perspective, meaning that they all thought that I was right-handed.
Oh, goodness. And you're left-handed?
Now, I've been in the military, I've been fingerprinted, and anybody knows if you've been even to jail and all that, they ask you if you're right-handed or left-handed.
Right.
So all these experts who claim they're the best in the world somehow couldn't match my fingerprints. So now, in 1999, they said, based on new technologies, they were able to match my prints to this lighter. Now, that raises another question. If they were able to match my fingerprints in 1999 to the so-called lighter, why wait another 8 years?
Right. Well,
you see, Kilo?
Yes. Cisco, talk a little bit about the fact that Harold Taylor, John Bowman, who is deceased and would have made it to San Francisco 9, except that he died in January of 2007, and Reuben Scott were tortured unmercifully in New Orleans after they rounded up 13 people, and 3 of them were tortured, including 2 of Harold Taylor, who just recently had all the charges dropped against him. Talk a little bit about that whole thing.
Well, yes. First of all, like you said, Reuben Scott, Harold Taylor, and John Bowman were tortured in New Orleans. That's a fact.
Right.
There's documented evidence against that.
Yes.
And
we should point people to the Freedom Archive's Legacy of Torture. It's a videotape that gives the whole, simulates the torture and has interviews with Harold Taylor and even John Bowman before he passed, as well as Sophia Elijah, who has been incredibly helpful on this case.
Right. Now, we think that the reason the charges were dismissed on everybody, of course, was because of lack of evidence. As we know, Jalil Muntakim and Herman Bell, who are serving a life, sentence for another case in New York, took a plea bargain on the deal, and the plea bargain was that they get probation to their, the sentence,
right,
that they're serving now, and that they would not have to testify against, their co-defendants.
Right.
So being anybody who's been incarcerated, being in prison for over 30 years, having conjugal visits, walking the yard, and then suddenly being placed in a jail in isolation. And I know I was there for 9 months, and in jail, and then for them, being able, like I said, to walk the yard and suddenly find themselves confined to a cell for 24 hours a day. They said it's 23 hours, but it's actually 24. You come out for a shower, and then you go back in your cell. They say that you can walk up and down the tier for an hour, and that's sometimes, you don't do that, because when you're in a tank, what they call a tank, with a tank, it could be a 4-man tank or a 5-man tank of individual cells, and you walk pacing back and forth. You have people with mental health issues, and when you're walking back and forth, they're going, "Why are you looking in my cell? Why are you looking in my cell?" So you wind up staying in your cell after the shower.
It's not a walk in the park.
It's not a walk in the park. So after being in those conditions for almost 3 years, the brother said, "Listen, we're not admitting to any guilt. We'll just take this, plea, and we won't."